saw that, so
We'll
I'm...
get started with the meeting, so we'll stay on time today, seeing we're first up. The grounds of Frank Morehouse, lead charge. We'll ask for an approval of the minutes of the last meeting by Ron, seconded by John. Any discussion, changes, deletions? Okay, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved.
Okay, first, Mr. Chairman, the packet includes a grant of easement request from National Grid. This is for a parcel on Glen Lake Road that is owned by the county. It's right at the portion where the bike path crosses Glen Lake Road. And they need to do some utility work there. They've requested a easement in order to replace an existing utility pole that's a phone utility pole. They want to replace it with a power utility pole, and then also place a guide wire onto the county parcel. So I've reviewed this with county attorney's office. Frankly, of all the parcels that could be negatively impacted by an easement like this is not the one. This parcel is virtually all wetland. I don't know exactly the history of how the county came in possession of it, but it is not a viable parcel. I don't believe there's a significant, if any, impact to the parcel as far as granting this easement for the guy wire. So both me and the county attorney are recommending that we approve this and authorize signature of this grant easement.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor. Motion by Matt, second. Second by Ron. Discussion. Any questions? Anyone else have any questions? Okay, hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, the only item I have is a court project update. The steel is pretty much completed. They're racking it and welding it, so they should be done with that in the next few days. The roof pans are going on. Framers starting today, and then they'll hit it heavily next week, so that should go pretty quickly. Vault walls, the concrete walls are up. The colors have been painted for the outside of that to match the rest of the building, so that is pretty well completed. The compactor pad out back is completed, and we'll be moving, the power will be installed there, so we'll be moving our trash compactor out onto that new pad, which will give them more room out back and also give them some temporary power for the construction site. The parking lot rip up in that area, and then the rest of it is probably going to start in the next few weeks. The roof drains are being worked on and pretty much complete. Floor drains are in, and the floor boxes for the electrical are in. They're anticipating pouring the floor on June 5th. And then once that's complete, then all the contractors can get inside under the steel frame and start their work. So I think we're in good shape. I think we're on schedule from what they anticipated, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions? Do you want to add anything to it, Ron?
No, we're still meeting every 2 weeks, and every Monday morning there is a construction foreman's meeting at one of the trailers, so we're pretty well up to date, and there hasn't really been any significant change orders to speak of. And as I talked about at the meeting, Dan, Friday, the power will be coming in from Route 9, which is somewhat of a change, a good change. The NIMO usually doesn't, or NIMO, National Grid usually doesn't give you a two option, a two service into a building. But in this case, they are doing it for us, and we'll have a separate electrical and a separate generator for the new courthouse expansion, which is probably a good thing. The other problem was that if we went the original way, we'd have to drill through 8 foundations to get the wiring to the courthouse. So this is a positive for us, and there is some, I guess, some savings, but in any event, it makes sense, and I think it's a good idea.
You have anything, Jeff?
No, I would add to Supervisor Montesi, these are changes that make sense, and they end up with a better project because of it. And it's been helpful having him in the meetings, and the contractors have been responsive to any of our concerns. We do have a couple other things that are going to be occurring. There's a gravel lot in the back area in front of Frank's building that we're gonna expand a little bit because of how it's being used now. We're gonna expand that parking lot just a little bit to allow some additional parking there, and then both that lot and the front park and ride lot, the intent would be later on in the project to pave those, but they're actually performing very well now with the base that we've established and the millings that we've established on site. So that's one of the things that are coming. And then I'll just reiterate the invitation to any supervisors if they want to see the project and do a walkthrough. You know, Frank can schedule a formal one for everybody to come to if you like, or we can just take the requests as they come. But there is significant work occurring, there's significant money being spent, and the project is advancing quickly. So if anybody wants to see the progress of that project up hand and close in the construction zone, please just contact me or Frank, and we'd be happy to arrange a walkthrough with you and show you what's occurring.
And we also did, with the core team meeting, we asked the courts if they're satisfied with the communication variables that have been going on, especially with the big trial that we just got done with, and they were very happy with the correspondence and everything was working in unison. The new entrance was open, everything worked fine, security was okay, so they're very happy with the progress and how we're handling everything moving forward. So good working relationship with the courts to date. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns that you want to bring up about the courts at this time? Okay, the only other thing I have, I attended the Cornell Cooperative last night. They've had an issue with their roof, and they notified Frank. They had several different leaks, and Frank sent his men up and went over everything and did the best they could with it, but they did inform Dr. Seeley that the roof has served its useful existence, and so I thought that I would bring it today to the committee. I know that we've done several different things with the extra sales tax money or whatever, but if we could move it to finance would be my position, so that we could do a one and done, to take that money, spend it, not have to budget it, and have a new roof for winter, would collectively, I think, be the best thing. But I'm open for discussion from the committee as to what they think. Go ahead,
What do you
Frank.
think it's
I'm sorry.
cost?
Frank, you want to address that? There's a couple ways I think we could go about it, you said?
We really don't have a cost estimate yet. I would have to go up and measure it. If we want to replace it with a roof similar to the one that's on it, it's a shingled roof. We did the train station in Riverside, and that's, I think, quite a bit larger than this roof, and I believe that was around $20,000.
That's using your own men, Frank, and
Yes.
doing it yourself. They're doing it in-house. I apologize to Frank and Jeff. I just brought it about on them this morning about it, in hopes that we have the season ahead of us to make our decisions and get it okayed as far as the funding source, et cetera. It's certainly not a budgeted item, but in fairness, I thought if we brought it up today and the committee, wanted to move it ahead, that we could get all those particulars, and they weren't sure if they could do it in-house or it would have to be put out to bid, but so that's why there's a little bit of a stumbling block as far as answering the questions. But you believe you would have time and the manpower, and
I think we can get it done, probably later in the summer, but I certainly can get cost estimates too.
okay. Craig, you had a question?
The question was about whether we could do it in-house, and so I guess that'll be determined, but I think it's worth advancing this.
Jeff?
I think the way to approach it is to intend to do it in-house, come up with a material estimate on what it would cost material-wise. Frank's crew is very constrained right now. We have individuals, we have vacancies, and we also have individuals that are out on medical leave that could be extended. So with everything else going on campus, it might not involve only Frank's crews. The other ability that we have to flex would be the Parks and Recs crew, who does that type of work as well. And they've obviously done work like that on the train stations as part of the Parks and Recs operation. I think we come up with a material estimate. We try and plan it and initiate the work. If we run into a pinch with manpower, then I think we look to contract support prior to the winter. And I think we can keep the roof tight enough during the summer, and then with the intent that we either get it done or we contract it in the fall.
Okay, is that acceptable? Is there any questions, or anybody got any concerns about that? I think the big concern is get it done before the winter. Chairman, please?
Yeah, what to do with our officer is fine, but I would say, given the order of magnitude, the dollar amount, how important a water-tight roof is, I would leave at the discretion of the commissioner. If you need to move forward quickly with 3 quotes, because I think you can do that, given the amount of money that I think you're talking about. I would just move forward and get it done, and I wouldn't run any risk of any further damage, particularly inside the building. If you get water inside the building, then you'll be tearing the sheetrock out because you have to go after the insulation. So we could be moving from a $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 project to an awful lot more very quickly. So I wouldn't even run the risk myself. I think I'd get 3 quotes from 3 roofing contractors prevailing wage, and obviously it's got to be done correctly, and I just would get it done. I just don't think we're waiting is risky on the roof. I speak from experience.
Ron?
I like the chairman's idea of moving forward with outsourcing it so we can get the job done, and that'll give us a number pretty quick. I would think Frank would be able to get it, as if the next step will be taking this to finance and seeing if we're going to use the reserve or how we're going to fund it.
Okay, now, is that the way you want to proceed with it?
We can do that. I would just give us some time to get those quotes. We're not going to have to do a formal bid. We can do written quotes for a project of that size. And then the intent would be likely to come back to committee in June, and in a month from now, with advancing it in mid-July through the board. And I think that would give the contractors time to get it done for winter season, for sure.
Is that acceptable with the committee? Is that okay? Okay, so we report back with some numbers next month, and we'll move on it. Okay. Anything else, privilege of the floor? Anyone have anything to address with buildings and grounds? Okay. And I think we'll move on to airport.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the agenda is a resolution request to transfer funds. We're recommending transferring funds from the contingency funds for some taxiway repair for culvert failure under taxiway Delta. The transfer request is for $30,000 for material costs and $5,000 for DPW highway labor costs. This is the location of the failure. It's right here for Bond Creek as it goes under taxiway Delta. And then...
Just hold on that for a second, Ross. So that's oriented north-south. The terminal building would be off your page to the top.
Yeah, it's right here.
So you can see the large hangar where the Open Door does their breakfast for Balloon Fest. That's the large hangar there. And then this is the area to the south. This would be, for most of you that have been on site for Balloon Fest, this would be where the large tour buses park on Taxiway Delta.
That's correct, yeah. And so this is the main access route to the approach end of runway 30 as well as the approach end to runway 1. So it really is an efficiency and safety issue to prepare this taxiway, get it up and running. Otherwise, aircraft have to back taxi on the runway.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor by Matt, seconded by Ron. Discussion.
How big a culvert is this?
So this is an 8-foot round culvert. This is the failure as it's opened up here. So we got an 8-foot round culvert, and then along the water line, that pipe has rusted its entire length. It's been squatted and separated at the collar there. So this is where the sinkhole develops, and this is what the sinkhole looked like before we opened it up. So you can see it's quite significant.
So this is,
And you can see it progressed as it went along. It rapidly deteriorated. That hole is quite
Yeah.
large, and you can see where it is in the middle of the taxiway. That would put an aircraft on its nose. This taxiway's been closed ever since.
yeah. So Ross's crews do a daily safety check, and they identified the initial concern of a crack in the pavement, and then, as Ross said, it quickly developed with the undermining of, soil being washed away from interior of the pipe. I've had engineers assess it, and it's a total replacement. It's not something that we can repair. We've already been in touch with Army Corps of Engineers and DEC regarding permitting for it. We don't see any issues there. We've verified the size of the pipe based on hydrology and determined that we can go back in with a similar sized pipe with no issues. In fact, the capacity of the pipe is really over-engineered at this point. And so we want to proceed quickly. We'll use our internal forces, and we will, as we've done in the past, we will charge the airport budget for highway personnel working off-highway. And then as part of this too, we're also assessing our other culverts. So there's a lot of culverts of this age that need to be assessed and another look at, so we make sure that we're not, so that we can come up with a plan for replacement and repair of culverts moving forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Just, Jeff, I'm sure you looked at it, but did you look at slipping a pipe in it, a smaller pipe, or lining it, as opposed to
Fish
having
passage.
to tear across the runway?
Yeah, this is beyond that. That repair would require some stability of the pipe, and this pipe is beyond that condition to make that viable.
One more question. Are most of the pipes like this, are they all that corrugated metal? Because if it is...
Many of them were installed in the same time frame, so we're assessing all of those culvert pipes now to make sure that we're anticipating the next priority as far as culvert replacements. I would anticipate more culvert replacements in the coming years.
Maybe we should look at, the other pipes they've gone quite as far. If they're over capacity, we could slip something and then grout it. It would be a lot less expensive, and a lot less disturbance to the...
Definitely, and we do that frequently on our highway projects, so that is always the preferred option if we can slip line and keep a structure in place without, opening up the pavement above.
Any other discussion?
At the town level, a lot of these metal pipes are looking like Swiss cheese.
And just so the committee is aware, we have already included in our airport capital improvement program an airport-wide drainage study as part of the master plan update, and that's programmed for 2 years from now. So we have intended on looking at all the airfield drainage.
Any other question? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a miscellaneous resolution request to approve the agreement with the Adirondack Balloon Festival. This year's festival, the dates are set for September 22nd through the 24th out at the airport. Not anticipating any changes with the agreement from last year or with the parking or fees for the RVers or the buses. Everything will remain the same as last year.
A motion to get on the floor by Matt, seconded by Ron. Discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the grant application for the final design for the Runway 1 extension. We brought the pre-application to the committee back in January. We now have the final numbers for the design grant application. The total dollar amount involved, including the FAA reimbursable agreement, that's for the FAA Navaid's portion of their responsibilities under the project, is $985,307. I printed out and passed out a copy of the Schedule A1, A2, and A3, the scope of work for this project. As you can see, the scope is quite extensive. And I would like to point out for you on page A1-6, at the bottom there, we did include geotechnical subsurface investigation and design work in the grant application and the design services to address the comments received on the environmental assessment. So we will be studying groundwater impacts due to construction of the runway extension. A2, we get into the scope of services for the wetland mitigation and permitting services. This will all be through a sub-consultant through McFarland Johnson, and then there are several tasks associated with that phase as well. Conceptual wetland mitigation design, they'll find the final locations for that wetland mitigation, where those locations might be at. The joint application for the permit with the Army Corps of Engineers and DEC, the compensatory wetland mitigation plans, and Speedy's permit as well, bidding, award, design assistance. And then we get into Schedule A3. That is the scope of work for the seeker phase. That's the environmental impact statement. That's the work that CNS will be doing for the EIS under the design grant.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor. Matt, seconded by John. Discussion. Claudia?
Just curious why this is titled a design if they're still doing a lot of the environmental work under the EIS.
Well, the project title is the Design, Mitigation, and Permitting.
So some of that environmental work is included as part of the design process.
And some of that environmental work can't be completed until they start the final design. There's information, data collection, technical data lab work that needs to be done in order for them to
So,
do the
for
final
instance,
design and
if the
environmental
concern is that a certain construction activity is going to impact the environment, they have to advance the design to know what that construction activity is going to actually involve. So, the two processes occur concurrently, and they're intermeshed. And as the design develops, and as the impacts are better defined, the coordination with DEC and Army Corps continues, and that correspondence and that communication continues so that the permitting agencies understand exactly what is going to occur as part of the construction, what the impacts are, and then what the proposed mitigation is. So we can't divide the two because one can't advance without the other. Essentially, they're meshed together from this point forward.
Is this a way to also pay for the performance of those duties, the engineering duties?
Yes.
Similar to when we moved the instrument flight landing gear to the other side, and then they had to do a bunch of reflective work, engineering work, to see if it was permissible. That was all grant payable to do that investigation.
Right. This is the mechanism to do that investigation work as part of the design.
Ron?
Exactly right.
Time frame, this whole packet, what are we looking at moving along?
Well, I would expect, we expect that the FAA won't be issuing a grant until September, but the grant application deadline is in June, here, coming up June 15th. June 16th is a soft deadline. So we'll have it after the board meeting on June 16th. The award is not expected until September because it's mostly discretionary money from the FAA. So we're competing across the entire nation for this money. And as a result, they don't make those decisions until the end of the federal fiscal year in September. So once we have a grant offer in hand, we execute the contracts to get the design work in place, establish the capital project, go through committee processes, a couple months to get us through committee and the full board. We're looking at actually doing the design work in December, and that's when it would
Into next
initiate
spring and
into
next
next
summer.
spring and into next summer.
What comes into play, because you mentioned that, and there was a concern that hydrology studies would or could or should be performed. So what does that do, timetable-wise, if that...
Yeah, that work will take place in the spring, as soon as the weather permits.
Claudia had another question?
I did. I know I communicated with Ross about the consultant's comments on the FAA public hearing.
Yes.
And just wondering what their time frame is that, our consultant's time frame for that, and again, aren't we putting the cart before the horse? I just feel like we should be waiting for the FAA to make their initial environmental determination before we continue charging forward with this, since we did separate the processes.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I would anticipate that that occurs prior to them awarding grants.
It has
So
to, yeah.
the issue is right now, it's the cumbersome nature of the grant process. We need to initiate the grant applications now. In the meantime, the FAA will continue their review. I don't anticipate that if there is an issue with the environmental review that the FAA would ever issue a grant. So we're applying now. The FAA is continuing their review. Prior to them actually awarding grants, they will have confirmed or denied whether the project is viable from an environmental standpoint, and they will have either issued a FONSI or not. So that's not, it's not so much putting the cart before the horse, it's just the reality of the timeline in being ready so that if and when, and we're frankly, we're anticipating a positive review from FAA.
Meaning, you think they're going to give us a finding of no significant impact?
I think they will, but they will have it conditioned on additional field work, which we've already included in the scope of work for this design grant. So I don't think there's going to, I don't anticipate coming back to committee with any surprises. You know,
So you think they will require us to do some additional studies and yet give us a funding? But if they don't, and we are required to go through a whole rigmarole of other things, we're still going to keep plowing through with this?
Well, I
That's
think-
my question, not to you, to my committee members.
Would you phrase it again?
That, you know, if the FAA comes back and says we need to do a whole rigmarole of things, are we as the county gonna continue forcing this project through? And that's my rhetorical question, I guess, to my fellow committee members.
Where would we go, Mark?
And Doug, do you want to add to it?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable going forward right now. I think we are putting the cart before the horse. I hear what you said. With all due respect, Jeff, you anticipate this and that. I see government, I've worked now within government, and for us to try to anticipate what someone's going to rule or how they're going to rule, I think is rather naive on our part. And I think we've been proven wrong many times. So let's just do this each step, and I agree with Claudia. Where do we pull the plug on this? I mean, the FAA comes back with all these stipulations. Is that not the time to pull the plug? So I say let's hold up. Let's wait for the FAA, their comments and their review, and then we'll go from there.
Matt?
I don't think we're forcing the project. I think we're navigating different agencies and different processes at the same time to end up with a result. I think if you separate them, you're going to be inefficient, conflicting, unable to make decisions. I think you have to keep continuing forward.
We already separated it though, because remember they said we were going to do a single public hearing on the state EIS and the FAA thing, and we've already not done that. This is calling for another public hearing on the state EIS. I mean,
How can that be bad?
Just
it's
to
not
hold
bad,
on,
but we're
folks.
not together anymore. I'm sorry.
Hold on, because you're getting a little out of the realm of, Jeff, do you want to address?
I guess just regarding the separate public hearings, that was a decision of the board to disconnect the two processes. In fact, that was a concern of Ross and I in committee, was that if we're not going to advance the seeker process in concurrence with the federal NEPA process, then we will end up with a disconnected.
Right, and I thought
So that wasn't something that was unanticipated. In fact, we warned the committee that we can do it that way, but it is going to be less efficient. It will require additional meetings, and that's the way we went.
Okay, Claudia, do you want to?
I thought that you warned us about all that, and I thought you were going to make it a consolidated process, and for whatever reason, I don't know how that happened, but it didn't. We're now on two separate tracks. I'm not blaming anyone, I just see that it has happened. And I remember you saying you had wanted to keep it together.
I would just say that we're on two different tracks, but they're concurrent tracks. They're heading to the same destination. So the grant application is consistent with the direction of the board on advancing this project, and every other vote that's occurred through the board and every other decision this committee's made. The next step is applying for the grant. We need to get that in the pipeline. Before that grant is awarded, the FAA will make a determination. If in fact the FAA comes back and says, you know what, the project is not ready, they're not going to allow us to advance to design work. That's the simple fact. If we don't advance the application for the design work, then we're essentially dooming the project for another year, an entire calendar year delay is what will happen. So I don't think we're presupposing the FAA's determination. We are in constant communication with the FAA and all of the other environmental agencies. Frankly, we would be incompetent and we would be derelict in our duties if we weren't talking with them. And we are in constant conversation with them regarding what the project needs are. And so I don't anticipate any surprises. The FAA has acknowledged some of the public comments already. They understand where we're at with the public comments, and Ross, in working with our design consultants, has already said, listen, some of the public comments need to be addressed, and we've included that stuff in the scope for this design application, this additional field work. So I don't think we're going into this with our head in the sand at all. I think in contrary, we are forward-looking, we're anticipating the concerns, and we're addressing the concerns as they come up. And frankly, I don't believe that we're doing that in an absence of guidance from the FAA and what we anticipate that their final determination is going to be.
Jeff, one of the things that has been pointed out that looks like we're going to execute is a hydrology study. And to do that hydrology study, the money comes from the grant applications that we've been making, and in particular, the one that we're trying to apply for now in September.
Yes.
And if there's other issues besides the hydrology study, other environmental issues that they want scoped or whatever, the engineering or the payment for that would come out of this grant also.
Yes.
So this is an application for a grant to continue on to finish up all the environmentality that we've been doing and get to where we can go get approved for design performance going forward. So this is important, in other words, to get the environmental stuff finished to pay for it.
Right, and the scope of work it's not just designing the runway extension, it's all of the environmental mitigation, it's the environmental work, it's all the related work related to those issues that have come up. It's not simply a construction design grant. It is environmental study and environmental mitigation as part of this design work.
Right.
You had said that the grant money is there, but I mean, if they said no, then the project would be, but is the grant money there? In other words...
The FAA has the money programmed in this fiscal year for this project.
Okay.
It's been programmed, so as we know, there's no guarantees until they actually give us an award, but
Yeah.
they have programmed it, assuming all the pieces fall in place, we can expect to receive a grant.
Claudia?
Thanks. My question was, is the grant application deadline now or September? You just mentioned the September deadline. And when would the next time this grant money would be programmed? I mean, this project has been pending for 10 years or something.
Jeff?
Yep.
Is it likely?
Yeah, it's not a September deadline, it's a September award. So the deadline is...
June 15th. I've already talked to the FAA about submitting on the 16th, the day of the board meeting.
So that the application goes in, the FAA does their formal review, and then we anticipate awards. Usually it's the second half of September. prior to the end of the fiscal year, federal fiscal year.
Was this program for us last year?
It's been in our four-year program, and as the environmental process has continued, this design phase keeps moving out until we've gotten to this point where we're ready to submit for a grant application. As the environmental phase is wrapping up for the federal process, we'll continue with the state environmental process in the design phase.
We lost a year just checking for a long-eared bat that wasn't even on the endangered species list. But it cost us a year to put out whatever it is, indicators, to see if it was there. It was not there, but
And I
that
did
that
speak
cost
with
us a year.
I did speak with our consultants. They have promised to get us the response to comments by next week, maybe even the end of this week. So I expect to be able to, we're going to send those off to the FAA, and at the same time I can distribute them to all the committee members.
Jeff?
Make those available.
I was just going to add that
I
part of
haven't seen
the
any of them yet.
part of the continuous review we do with the FAA program managers is exactly this, that if there are new elements of scopes of work that are added in due to, you know, public outreach, due to, you know, the public meetings, due to unforeseen circumstances, we're constantly updating our counterparts at the FAA. They are annually, they're reviewing and projecting out. They project 5 years out, and then they adjust from there. So although we had a delay with some of the additional field work related to the Marl Fen there a couple years ago, they took that money, they pushed it forward, and they're programming. So they're working with us on a regular basis. Right now, they have it programmed for award in September. So there's no crisis of funding. The issue will be, okay, do they feel that the county is ready? Are they satisfied with the work that has been done to date? And are they ready to advance the additional field work, the environmental work, the mitigation design, and the construction design, and have some level of confidence that that is a viable project? So if that doesn't occur and they push us back to the drawing board, what will happen is they will say, listen, there's still significant issues. We're going to delay this again, and they'll roll the money forward into end of 2018. I don't anticipate that happening at all. I think we've gone through this. We've been in constant communication with them and our environmental agency partners, and so, but that would be the process. If in fact there is some catastrophic environmental issue that won't allow the project to advance, that would occur between now and September before they award the design grant.
Greg?
On the schedule here, received bids June 2019. So that's what we're working up to on this. But by the time we really get into having, if this all goes forward as planned, we'd be looking at construction then to start somewhere in 2019 or rather later 2019, wouldn't it be?
Right, yeah, the construction grant would be anticipated based on the schedule, the design schedule, bids received in June. That would allow us to apply for a grant in June of 2019, begin construction the end of 19, early 20.
Okay. And
Still got the floor.
the 49,000 we need to match on this, will these be spread over these 3 years, 17, 18, and 19?
It's all already in this year's budget.
Okay.
Other
Yes.
question?
But just to follow up on that, we do, as part of the budget process and working with the budget officer and the budget team, we do a projection for our capital projects that require local match. And we do that we fit in that local match what's required from a county fiscal year each year, even though the overall project might require a larger amount. We narrow it down into, okay, what's required this year, what's required the following year, so it is spread across all of those years of the county calendar year, the fiscal year.
But 49 is the total sum you need.
Yes.
For the design. Yep.
Any other questions? Claudia?
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure.
Or show of hands, maybe?
As I was gonna ask for a show of hands. Okay, gonna call the question, all in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed, raise your hand, please. Okay. Motion passed.
Okay, moving on, Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda is a resolution request. This is for our second FAA DOT grant. This is for the construction phase of the airfield guidance sign replacement, crack sealing, and markings project. Again, construction phase. We did receive the bids. The total dollar amount involved is $769,359 with a local match of $38,468. Here. So here's the grant application. As you can see, it's quite lengthy. It's 46 pages. So there's 3 different project elements here. Total cost. Zoom in on that. So here we go for the airfield guidance sign replacement portion. It's $300,000 for the pavement repairs, and this is all airside pavements, both runways, all the taxiways, all the ramps. $342,659. And for replacing the runway markings impacted by all that work is $126,550. So the airfield guidance signs, that's every lighted airfield guidance sign, and it's based on the airport. And then the markings and the pavement repairs are, as you can see, are quite extensive. A lot of repairs. This here page is the certified bid results, engineer's estimate. As you can see right here, for construction was $690. So the first column there, $690, was the engineer's estimate. The low bid received was within $400 of the engineer's estimate, and the other bid received was $791, which is $100,000 more. Engineers have reviewed the bid results, and we do not anticipate any issues with the low bidder.
The motion to get it on the floor by Ron, seconded by John. Discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, that's all I have for committee today. You want to review the borough pending items?
Sure.
The spreadsheet, I was waiting on some additional data. I had received it, but I haven't had a chance to put all the data into my spreadsheet yet. I do anticipate distributing that prior to next committee meeting for everyone's review. The alternative parking plan, we have received a copy of the plan, and engineering has done some preliminary review. Basically, that review includes some signage and directional information to add to the design. We'll need to schedule a meeting to go over that with the FBO here shortly. And the third item there was...
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Greg.
On that, I had a comment after the last meeting there that you're redoing parking and whatnot on this facility. It's not subject to any site plan review on things, and just usually there's a standard process. If it was in a town and any private thing, the applicant would have to show that all these things were considered. So just to bring me up to speed then, when this happens on the airport and anything like that, besides engineering looking at it and assessing the drainage base and all of the engineering requirements, is there anything else that goes into the review of that? Because we are working with the overall layout of that airport. Are there other considerations that we have as a checklist?
Yep.
Those normal commercial considerations don't have jurisdiction over this type of work. The town planning board or zoning board wouldn't have jurisdiction at all. They undergo engineering studies in review of applications similar to this. The county also does engineering studies in review of applications like this. usually in-house because we have the engineering staff that we do at DPW. I would only say that there is no authority that exists outside this board on authorizing this type of work. If the committee wanted additional studies, then I think that would be up to the board to commission additional studies and review at a higher level or independent consultant review. But the authority to authorize this type of work really lies with your airport manager in the initial review, DPW engineering, and then in large part with FAA standards and DOT Aviation Bureau standards where they might apply. And it's just a different set of jurisdictional review. It doesn't mean that review is not occurring. It's just it's not what most of you see at the town level.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Even for this project, the FAA will need to review a change to the airport layout plan, even roadways, parking lots, any changes whatsoever that take place need FAA review and sign off and approval of the airport layout plan.
Yeah, Ron?
It also fits in with the master plan that we have for the airport. It's not a change, so to speak.
Well, I don't think the parking expansion was anticipated as part of the airport master plan. However, it was anticipated, as part of the commercial development. There are contract elements, even in the restaurant development, that, in fact, that if I almost said the FBO, it's not the FBO. If Skimmerhorn Aviation, the development branch of Skimmerhorn Aviation, wants to add parking, that they would do so at their cost. It's part of the contract for their land lease. And so I think, the county attorney and the county administrator at the time anticipated these issues, as well as Ross and I, when they first developed the restaurant. And so I think it's consistent with that effort to encourage commercial development at the airport, for sure.
Just to add to that, I know that one of the things is that the county attorney informed me that he has had discussions with the attorney for Rich Air, and they're ongoing at this point. He just wanted to inform the committee.
Okay. Chairman?
Yeah, just to maybe give you my perspective to respond to Supervisor Leggett's, I think, direction on this is that I have spoken to supervisors and staff about, shall we say, formalizing that application process, so that there's a formal application process. We communicate well to whoever the developer is, what the process is, what the timeline is, what material is going to be required of them. And then we also have, within our own process, we seek input from, or whatever we need to seek input from, but not only include engineering, but lawyers and also planners. So the site analysis that we're getting is complete, shall we say, and not as sporadic. We're not there yet, Greg. That's where we're at. At least if I have my say, that's where I'd like to have.
Hey, Russ?
Couple of quick updates for construction activity at the airport. The Field Farm project construction is underway. That began yesterday. The temporary fueling solution has been implemented, and we're all set there for the FBO, so that's been taken care of as well. The tree removal project off the approach end of runway 30 is nearing completion. I've also been in discussion with our farming contractor. They're going to be planting corn out there, and we'll be getting additional revenue for those areas that are underneath the approach across Queensbury Avenue. So we'll bring in a little extra revenue. We'll add those acreage to our contract with Ideal Dairy, and I think we'll be able to expand our parking options for Balloon Festival as well.
Okay. Anything else come before the board? Okay. Privilege of the floor.
Thank you. Travis Whitehead, Queensbury. With regards to the 2002 Airport Master Plan, the advisory committee was tasked with taking a look at that, and while we didn't get to it in our last meeting, I was hoping to, and I was prepared to make some comments, and I think it's appropriate to make a couple of conclusions right now, because you are looking at that Airport Master Plan as driving the, parking lot and everything else. In that master plan done in 2002, the critical airplane was the G4, Gulfstream 4. They found in 2009 that that was not, they could not use that. There were not enough operations for that one, and they downgraded it to B2. It is B2 now. So you've gone from a C3, which means C means landing faster, longer runway needed, and 3 is the width of the wings, to a B2. So you've downsized actually since the date of 2002. You've also, at that point in time, they were saying they had 38,000 more or less operations a year, and they were predicting by 2020 they'd be up to 56,000 operations a year. In fact, instead of going up from 38,000 to 56, the latest numbers that we have in the documents that were presented to the FAA just in the past couple of weeks is 37,000. So it's actually gone down since 2002. So some of the biggest assumptions about that airport are not coming to fruition. So rather than, what I'm trying to say is that rather than relying on a report that was written 15 years ago, and projecting things that might happen in 15 years, it would behoove you to see what actually happened over the last 15 years and act upon that information rather than blindly going forward with what was suggested back in 2002. Thank you.
Anyone else? Chairman?
Chairman, yeah, I promise it won't take long, but I do think we need an executive session regarding a contractual matter dealing with the airport.
Okay, so a motion to go into executive session to
I
discuss...
can make that motion, I'm offering it.
To discuss the contractual matter associated with the airport operation. Okay, Matt, you're making that, seconded by Ron. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? On anything that happened in executive session, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. By Ron, seconded by John. All in favor? Aye.
Done.
Opposed? So moved.
Done.